Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast of SF Cardinals Talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL wire site that covers the Arizona Cardinals. Recording episode 773. It is the continued NFL draft previews for 2026 as we go position by position. And joining me as my co-host, as he has this whole series and for most of the show of the last 700 plus episodes, is Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site. And Seth, we had a position that the Cardinals love to draft, but and while we think they're not going to draft one this year, I bet they do. I bet they cornerbacks, seven cornerbacks in the last three drafts, 4 in the top 100. They have a roster full of cornerbacks, but it still wouldn't surprise me if they draft one.
Right. And, this is a value position. It's something that they've invested heavily in. I mean, you mentioned the investments over the last several years under Monty Ossenfort, and it's the complete 180, right, of the Steve Keim era, where we're like, hey, that position is there, right? Like you're allowed to you're not allowed to draft corners. Okay, sounds good. And so
they kept playing we got Patrick Peterson, and therefore we just have to fill the other position somehow.
Yeah, and you look at his 3 years. I mean, Garrett Williams and in year one, right, and Keitrell Clark, and by the way, when we talk about corners, let's be honest, they're like safeties, linebackers, right, and tight ends for the most part, running backs. Like day 3 picks don't count. They don't count towards the overall, because they're positions that you take flyers on athletes in the later rounds, right? So, but you look at it, obviously Garrett Williams, top 90 pick. Keitrell Clark was a 6th rounder, still sticking around, doing a good job. Max Melton, top 90 pick. Elijah Jones, top 90 pick.
There was Jaden Davis, 7th rounder.
Yep, and that's the lottery ticket that we talk about. But then Will Johnson, top 90 picks. So, and what's interesting is the guy that looked the one that consistently towards the end of the year was Denzel Burke, who they took in the 5th round last year. Played well, 3 interceptions. Did a nice job in his 17 games played. Garrett Williams has 4 interceptions in his career. Like I said, Burke's already got 3 in his career. Like, he's a guy that found a way to have some success. And so, you look at that and you look at the names, right? The names and the depth chart we've discussed. Right now it's Will Johnson and Denzel Burke, your ones, and Garrett Williams is in there, but we don't know what his status is going to be. Probably not until a couple weeks into the season at the earliest. Starling Thomas is back, and that's an important one. He was a veteran that they missed last year. They just missed his steady being there consistently. Sean Murphy Bunting, Max Melton, Keitrell, and Elijah Jones. You've got names everywhere. The reality is you have Denzel Burke, who is a 5th rounder, a lot of questions. Will Johnson is an insanely talented player, but the nagging injuries thing reared its head. He only had played in 12 games. That's not something you want from a starting corner. Elijah Jones has played in 10 games in his career. Max Melton's only played in 27 games in his career, and Garrett Williams in 3 seasons played in 35 games and is coming off an Achilles injury. So, and then you look at Starling Thomas, his was a freak, injury. You look at Sean Murphy Bunting, he's on a league minimum with nothing guaranteed after, his incident in the offseason last year. They've invested, but they have nothing that means you can't draft somebody. And there's three guys getting that consensus kind of first round, and the top guy in this class, he's probably not a guy you're going to see go in round one. Be picked if the Cardinals trade back. Sorry, I apologize how I said that. But he's a guy that would, immediately be a starter for this team coming into the year, and that's Mansour Dillon out of LSU. He's a guy that checked all the boxes this offseason in terms of what teams want in corners, right? He came in at the size they want. He came in at the athleticism they want. Like, he checked the boxes that were the questions, and really it became a question of, would he be that frame at 6 foot 187? Would that be enough? But he's a guy that had some success, at Virginia Tech his first 3 years, and then was an AP All-American in his one season at LSU. And he's a guy that, really just is everything you want in a corner. He's a guy that's willing to stick his nose in there and tackle, but he's able to move better than most of these other corners, and that's what makes him truly unique and special. This year he had 11 pass breakups in 11 games. He had 2 INTs. The year before that, in 12 games, he had the 7 pass breakups, 4 INTs. The year before that, just the 1 INT and pass breakup. But the last 2 years, the on-ball production has been what we've talked about, right? You want to see 1 a game from these top-level corners, and he's been that. He's a guy, like I said, if you trade down, we've seen all the mock drafts. If you trade down to 12, I mean, there's just a reality that he's probably a better football player than any of the offensive linemen you can take. Now, it doesn't mean it's as pressing of a need, right? But the reality is he might just be one of the top 5 players in this class. That's how good he is. And so that's what makes it difficult. From there, you've got guys that depends on what your flavor is, right? Jermod McCoy, coming out of Tennessee, came in at 6'1", 188 pounds, so a little bit taller, same body frame as Mansour, but just not the guy that you would normally take in the first round. And the reason why is McCoy, played in 12 games at Oregon State in 2023, and then might have been an unquestioned top 5 guy in this class after he was a second-team All-American as a sophomore last year at Tennessee. 9 pass breakups, 4 interceptions in 13 games. Didn't play a down this year. And he tore his ACL last January, so he's should be healthy. He's got traits that are unique. It's just there's 1 full season of film. You're drafting a guy that's lean and insanely twitchy, that is coming off an ACL injury, and the reality is, and by the way, it can happen to any guy, right? Like, we're not saying that he's undraftable, but for the Cardinals at the position, they can't do that again, can they?
No, that wouldn't make sense. And we do believe in drafting the best player, but it would be very curious to see them take a cornerback that early. Is there aside Delane and McCoy? I see in the consensus board that Clemson's Avion Terrell could likely sneak into the back of the first round. What is he's the cousin of former Falcons AJ Terrell?
No, he's the brother.
His brother.
Yeah. And they play a lot alike. He's just smaller. You know who he reminds me of is Garrett Williams. That kind of just really feisty, fierce, on ball, on production, slot corner. I think he can play outside if needed, but a little smaller than you want. Came in at 5'11", 186, but he's not like this insane athlete. Like that's the thing with him. Like 34-inch vert, which is good, but it's not like it's crazy. And a 10-3 broad, again, good, but not crazy. And so, but he's the prototype slot defender, and in a game and in a division with all the slot talent that the Cardinals face, he would be a guy that would fit. But yeah, he's the end of round 1, beginning of round 2. And that really takes us to the day 2 guys.
Coming up next on the Rise of Sierra podcast of Star Cardinals talking. Let's talk about the day 2 cornerbacks, rounds 2, rounds 3. Who should be around there? That's coming up next on Rise of Sierra. We're back on the Rise of Sierra podcast, Best Star Cardinals talking web, talking about cornerbacks. We now look into the guys that are going to be kind of day 2 guys. The first guy we talked about, Avion Terrell, guys on the consensus board that could, if the Cardinals are looking for a cornerback, you've got Colton Hood, Tennessee, you've got Chris Johnson, San Diego State, you've got Brandon Sissy out of South Carolina. But I don't think they'll go cornerback in round 2, but there are some names that make sense in terms of the value.
Yeah, and you mentioned, starting off with Hood out of Tennessee, started off at Auburn, went to Colorado, then made his way to Tennessee and took McCoy's spot, kind of as their number 1 guy. You look at what he did last year, Colorado, and only 1 start. He played in 13 games, so kind of that nickel dime guy, 2 INTs, 6 pass breakups. This year, he started 12 games, had 8 pass breakups, 1 INT, but he did return it for a touchdown. He is a super, super physical, athletic guy, 6 foot, 193, but 40.5-inch vert, a 4.44 40. Like this is a guy that plays the game in a more physical manner than the guys we talked about in previous, and that's good and bad, right? Like he's a little over aggressive, can get himself out of spots at times. And then from there, you look at it, you mentioned Chris Johnson. No, not the former running back, but this one's a really talented corner at San Diego State, and a guy that I'm shocked that he's not getting a little more love in round 1. But I also understand it, came in at 6 foot, 193, ran that 4.4 flat, 38-inch vert, 10.6 broad, super explosive guy. You look at it, he played all 4 years, was the special teams player of the year. In 2023 was the team's freshman of the year on defense. Honorable mention all Mountain West, last year where he had an INT and 4 pass breakups, and then second team AP All-American this year, co-defensive player of the year in the Mountain West. His numbers were absurd, man. I mean, had just under 1.2 passes defense per game, 4 INTs. He returned 2 of those for touchdowns, 9 pass breakups in 11 games. So 13 pass breakups, getting a lot of comps to Byron Murphy. So same area that Murph was drafted in, right, for the Cardinals back in 2021, I believe, or 20.
2019.
That was that long ago. Holy cow!
Yeah, because it was Kyler, Byron, Zach Allen in 2019.
Yeah, a great draft. You mentioned Cisse, another 6 foot 189 corner, played in the SEC, had a lot of success. Man, this corner class on day 2 is loaded. Like you're gonna see, let's say Terrell sneaks into the third or first round, you could literally see 10 to 12 corners go on day 2. Like that's just how much talent there is in this draft. Cisse, 41-inch vert, 10-11 broad, started out at NC State, played 13 games as a reserve and on specials, then played in 9 in 2024, but had 5 pass breakups and a reserve role, and then was a full-time starter, had 5 pass breakups and an INT this year at South Carolina. Because of his athleticism, you look at it, he's like McCoy, but without the injury. Like he's an athletic freak that like has a really, really good season, but you're also like, hey, where was more of this? My absolute favorite probably player in this draft, and we'll run through him quick because I genuinely don't think that there's a way he gets drafted by the Cardinals, but D'Angelo Pons out of Indiana, 5'9", 182 pounds, had a 43.5-inch vert. He is a slot corner. Was at James Madison, freshman All-American, second team All Sun Belt, had 13 pass breakups in 13 games as a freshman, dude. 2 INTs, then came over All Big Ten, 9 pass breakups, 3 INTs in 13 games for Indiana last year or in 2024, and then AP All-American, All Big Ten, 10 pass breakups, 2 INTs. Like this is a dude that like he's just, I don't know, he's just a lot of fun, man. But again, 5'9", 182. We haven't seen Monty venture off the path of what is considered to be, the metrics that need to be checked or the boxes that need to be checked that much yet, right? From there, another slot guy that could really fit and kind of, ease the pain of Garrett Williams. But again, how high are you going to take him? Is he a guy that you would take at 64? Keontae Scott, he's on the older side. Scott's another Miami player. He'll be 25 though this year. Came in at 5'11", 193. Was an All-American, two-time All-American at Snow College in Utah, and then went to Auburn. 9 starts at Auburn, had INT, 4 pass breakups, and then played at Auburn 2 more years. So again, you look at it, played 5 years of college, and then he went to Miami for his final season, and he was fantastic. There's nothing more you could say about it.
And something important about Scott is that the Cardinals hired his position coach. So he's a name definitely to watch on day 2 because the Cardinals hired his position coach in Zach Etheridge.
Yeah, and just, the biggest thing with him is the age. Like we've talked about this, a day 2 pick at 25. My thing is, if you're taking a guy in the 3rd round and you're really confident you can get 4 years out of him, I don't think that's a bad thing, right? Like maybe you don't get a second contract, or maybe it's a short second contract, but I don't think it's a bad thing. There's a million guys we can talk about, but I'll talk about 2 local guys real quick. Excuse me. Keith Abney the second, another undersized 5'10". He's not undersized, but undersized for the NFL to be a consistent outside corner. 5'10", 187. You look at it, had 9 pass breakups and 3 INTs in 14 games in 2024. And then first team All Big 12 pass breakups, 2 INTs in 12 games. This dude is just another guy I absolutely love. And if he was the pick at 64, it might be a little rich for some people, but I think getting a guy that has comps to like Taron Johnson would be ideal, because as good as Garrett Williams is in the slot, like you're talking about a guy now that has had an ACL and an Achilles, is coming into the last year of his contract. And let's be honest, you cannot give Garrett Williams a contract extension until you see him on the field again, right? Like you have to see his play, and that's not a shot at the kid. We always want these guys to get paid. We're 1000% pro player, but just from a business perspective, you genuinely cannot give you just can't pay that kid right now. Keith Abney would be a tremendous fit, in my opinion. I'd love to see him stay local. And I'm not one of those guys. I mean, Jess can vouch for this. I'm not a guy that goes, oh, get to ASU. But the way Abney plays the game, the way he would, really invigorate the defense, it would be really, really fun. And then finally, trading Stukes out of U of A. You can boo if you want, Jess. I don't care. But,
boo. But my question on him, is he going to be more corner? Or is he going to be more safety when he gets to the pros?
That's the question.
I've seen him more safety listed in a lot of places.
I mean, you see some of it, but man, the on-ball production for a safety is like, it is insane to look at. Just in 2021, here's the thing with Stux, though. We have to also take a step back. 25, so he's old, right? But it's cool because like he was a walk-on from, I believe, Millennium, but don't quote me on that. But a 6-year senior in 2021, he led the team with 7 pass breakups in 5 starts. 7 starts the next year, had 5 pass breakups and an interception. Then 12 games the next year, just 9 pass breakups and an interception. Missed a lot of time in 2024. Part of the reason he did come back this year because of a knee injury. And then was a 3rd-team All-American, 4 INTs, 6 PBUs in 10 games. Like he's a ball magnet. If you grade him as a safety, probably not a guy you want for the Cardinals, right? But he shows that he can be kind of a big nickel type of guy that can play that slot, and his athleticism, 4.33, 38-inch vert, 10-10 broad, good change of direction skill.
He's a more athletic Jalen Thompson.
Yeah, and that's the way you can look at it. And the way you want to see him, or where you want to see him, if you were to get him at 64, is what your role is for him this year, and he gives you kind of that Cooper DeJean role this year, and then you can make decisions on Buddha. You've got a full season of Rabbit and things like that to look at and break down. Like we said, dude, you go from Abney, you've got Davison, Igbana's son from Ohio State, Julian Neal, Chandler Rivers, Malik Muhammad, like guys we didn't even mention, all projected to go in the top 100 picks. Like this class is loaded at the corner position.
Let's talk a few day 3 guys coming up next in the Rise of Sierra podcast. Best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Who are some day 3 guys that are worth knowing? That's coming up next in Rise of Red. We're back on the Rise of Sierra podcast. Best hour Cardinals talk on the web. Day 3 cornerbacks. The Cardinals like day 3 cornerbacks. Keitrell Clark, Jaden Davis, Denzel Burke. They love to add DBs. I wonder if it'll be a little bit different because partially, they had Jonathan Gannon, who was a DB's coach by historically, but day 3, you've got some names out there, some, odd names at that, because you've got a Takario Davis, an Ephesians Prysock, a Hezekiah Massis, Thaddeus. There's some names, man. There's some names, but who are names that stand out as guys who could be picked up late on Saturday?
Well, one you mentioned, like from the start, is Takario Davis. He's a former U of A player Measured in at 6'4", 194, and then ran a 4.47 with a crazy vert, good broad. Second team All Big 12 conference last year for U of A before flipping over to Washington and the Big 10, I believe now. I can't remember where all these
Big 10.
don't remember this stuff. Just go back to the way it was, where it's easy for me. He is a guy that has really intriguing cover three skills because of his size, his ability to change directions, and his length and athleticism. But he could also be a hybrid type free safety. So again, on day 3, right, guy you're like, that kind of would be an interesting one there. From there, you mentioned Hezekiah Massis, another, old Pac-12 guy that's now in the ACC, 6'1", 179. Didn't test overly well, but you look at what he's done from going from Florida International to Cal and then becoming a second team AP All-American, led the FBS in terms of passes defensed, had 5 INTs, 13 pass breakups in 13 games. Like the size, the length is all there. It's just the athleticism isn't everything you'd want it to be. So, but a guy in the 6th round that's a ball magnet, like, dude, that's, like you said, that's a hard one to pass up, because that's just a hard position to look at and say, oh, I know you were really, really productive, but you don't have a couple measurables that I'm looking for, or you didn't hit these numbers that I wanted to see, right? So those are the interesting ones. Again, when you're talking about corners and safeties, the names, it always kind of really comes back to like how they move, right? And then what type of like explosive athleticism. We talked about obviously D'Angelo Pons and his insane vertical, but 2 guys that had really insane verticals as well. One's a bigger guy, but he played at Stephen F. Austin State. I don't remember. I thought they went by SFA. No, I don't know. But anyways, Charles Demings out of Stephen F. Austin State, 6'1", 193, ran a 4.41, so very, very fast, but then had a 42-inch vert with an 11-foot broad. You look at it again, when we talk about FCS guys, they obviously have to have those metrics, but then you have to look at him and go, oh, this is a guy that they either A, refuse to throw at, or B, put up insane production. 10 games, had 2 INTs, 8 pass breakups. Okay, so check. Year 1, check, right? That 1 per game. Year 2, second team All Southland Conference, 10 pass breakups and 2 INTs, so 12 in 9 games. And then they're like, you know what? Let's just not throw at him anymore. 4 INTs, but only 5 pass breakups, because he just didn't get targeted anymore. He's a guy on day 3 that you take a flyer on, because it's very rare to see a 6'1", 193 corner that's a low 4.4s with this insane athleticism. It's just not something that you see. I don't want to go like overboard because he's way, way thicker, but kind of, Dominic Rogers-Cromartie-esque, right? In terms of athleticism and excelling at the slightly lower level. And then Will Lee was another one. It was weird, man. He didn't burn it. 4.52 is not, anything special. 6'1", 1.5, 190 pounds. Really long arms for this class, 32 3/4 inch. But man, he had a 42-inch vert and 11-foot broad. And so you look at him and you go, this is an explosive guy with a huge wingspan that did a lot of different things at Texas A&M. And by the way, went up every single year. Started out at Iowa Western Community College, then went to Kansas State. And again, not taking anything away from Kansas State, but not exactly like anything and then you go to Texas A&M and you're a second team all SEC, and then you put up the numbers you do in 12 games. Like you just show that he can play at every level, because of the lack of spin speed, which is okay. That's not a big deal. You just have to understand what his limitations are and what he would fulfill for the Cardinals if they decided to go that route. But I mean, he's a guy that offers something that they don't have, in terms of size and length, and the production. And again, I love guys that go from JC to the Big 12 to the SEC and just like get better at every stop.
Anybody else worth noting? Or I know that cornerbacks get drafted in droves.
Yeah,
because you need somebody on the roster. They play special teams. Yep.
Like I said, we could see 15 go in the top 100. Jess,
that's crazy.
And so then when you're talking about 15 in the top 100, this is probably the deepest position of the class, I would say. This class of corners, they're trying to catch up in terms of size and athleticism with the wide receivers, and it's starting to really show that it's happening.
And with that, we will wrap up this edition of the Rise Up Secret podcast about our Cardinals talk of the web. We'll be back again with one final preview show position-wise. We've got the safeties. That's coming up. That's coming up soon. But until then, that's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening as always. We'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.